You're listening to a 4x4 Radio Network podcast.
Hey, Jeeples. Welcome to another episode of On the Trail with Kevin. We're still missing Scott. He will be here, he promised, but Scott is a parts guy, and he has been working as a critical employee during this worldwide event that's going on right now. So anyway, I'm Kevin, the engineer, the general tech guy, and I don't know where he is. Oh, whoa.
Wait, stop the podcast. I always want to say that.
And you just did. Folks, Scott is here and just banged his knee on the desk, putting on his headphones. I just told them who I was. Why don't you pick up with the normal?
And I'm Scott. I'm the one parts guy that's incredibly in a lot of pain right now for blasting my knee into Kevin's desk.
So they actually let you out of the parts counter?
Yeah, I'm now free from the parts mines.
Okay, so leading into that, while we will share what worked for us as well as what didn't,
Like slamming your knee into the desk.
Slamming your knee into that, and we really will cover a lot of that on this show. It's really up to you to choose what you want to do with your Jeep. So
remember,
do your research,
read the instructions,
and always please follow them.
Follow them like my kneecap rolling across the floor. Save that, put it in ice. I'm going to need that later.
So, well, folks, we hope you're all hale and hearty. Scott and I are both, I'm healthy. How are you doing?
With my knee right now? I don't know. I'm just some grunt candy here in a minute. But no, I'm good. I'm actually, I'm glad to be at work.
And I have to laugh because I'm running around here, and unfortunately, if you guys haven't figured out by now, after 3 years, I do suffer a bit from allergies, and so every time I sneeze or, God forbid, cough because of an allergy, I get evil looks of, "Oh, what are you doing? Or do you have the bug?" I refuse to even name that stuff at this point with everything going on.
We had a writer that was out with a guest that walked all the way across. I'm doing tires outside, right? And he walks outside for a second, does the whole. It turns and walks back, and I'm looking at him. He goes, "I have a customer right now that's so freaked out about things. I knew if I had to write, I said, I'll be right back. I had to run outside to cough to come back in." Okay, because the allergies, we still have pollen in the air.
Yeah, and in Florida, we're starting the early, what do you want to call it? Just events of rain coming, our rainy season. What we have is wetter, hot and wet,
But we have the seasons in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, what is it? We have pollen season, hurricane season, love bug season, the rainy season. Did I already say hurricane already?
Yeah, you said hurricane.
Okay, tourist season.
Well, maybe tourist will be light this year.
We'll see.
We'll see, though, because, Mouse World next door is talking about reopening in another 2 weeks, I believe. So, Actually, probably by the time you hear this, it'll be about a week.
Yeah.
Limited startup and all that stuff. And everybody is gingerly walking around. You never quit. My wife, who works in the medical industry, went back 2 weeks ago to get things started. They started going back to doing surgeries and stuff this week. And she's actually starting to breathe a little bit of a sigh that things are beginning to level out a little bit.
A little bit of normalcy.
You still can't get toilet paper easily in this part of the woods. I'm sure the rest of the country can. I've been noticing that, but I did find out something, Scott.
What's that, sir?
When I started digging and then said, okay, why?
Okay, whoa, were you burying in the backyard now?
No. I was trying to figure out why. Why was it TP? And I found out something interesting.
What's that?
A lot of the producers of paper goods in the U.S. produce, and I think, and somebody, if you know better, can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe I read that it's called technical papers, which technical papers are, printer papers, magazine papers, the photographic papers.
Right.
And then there's personal papers. And that doesn't take a stretch to figure out where personal papers, the term comes from. Almost none of them are produced in the U.S. They're produced, guess where?
China.
Yeah. And so that's kind of why they've been really slow to come back, Yeah. So they're working on it. And as much as the rest of us would love to go to, Weyerhaeuser and some of these others, who do all the technical. Can't you convert? I've been in those facilities in my prior life, and no, it's not flip a switch, guys. It's it's immense machinery moving literally at 60 or 70 miles an hour, making these products. So
I do have to byline real
Go
quickly,
ahead.
and I know we'll get to the Jeep show here in a second, guys. But Dory and I went to the Big Blue Box recently, and we were walking around, and every single bicycle was sold. The bike racks at the Walmart were sold, and I'm looking, and the employee goes, "Yeah, the people are out riding their bikes." And I thought to your situation about toilet paper, they turn the bikes upside down, getting the tire going real fast. I actually brought that comment up to work, and everyone goes, "What are you doing? What are you on?" I'm like, Advil right now. I'm freebasing Advil.
All you have to do is look around the neighborhood, and there's some neat effects to this. That on the positive is I see more families out together. And parents with kids, and everybody's kind of staying in their own little group. One of the other weird things that I noticed, and feel free, folks, to give us comments back, because I'd love to hear what it sounds like in your world. The sky. It hit me that the sky reminded me of 9/11, and I got shivers because I was on the road on 9/11.
Less contrails.
There was none here for several days when the airlines finally had to kind of pull the plug on a lot of the flights, and they're just now beginning to come back up, but nowhere near the volume. Being here near Tampa, we're on the approach to Orlando, Tampa, Sarasota.
I work near the airport.
Yeah, and I used to work at the airport, and don't anymore. It's been different. It's quieter, and it's kind of bizarre. So not everything has been negative.
Positives.
So, Scott, anyway, we've been getting quite a bit of email about the fact that you are a JT owner, although we remind folks that he's really a JT co-owner on the small CO. It's his wife. It's the financial department's JT.
Well, there's like growing up in the 80s, we grew up with the acronym MAD, Mutually Assured Destruction.
Yep.
And me and the wife have the same kind of agreement. The LJ's primary in her name, the Gladiator's primary in my name.
But
so I drive the LJ. She's happy in the Gladiator. I leave that subject alone.
Smart man. Yeah. That's actually, we do the same thing. We didn't intend for it that way, but that's the way it ended up here.
Well, and there's not really a whole lot to report. I mean, we love the Jeep. It's, we're getting decent gas mileage out of it. I know everyone hates hearing that, you don't buy a Jeep for gas life. Yeah, well, getting 19 and a half miles per gallon. Even though I'm not going to lie to you, I hated that the on-off start thing because, being a child with junk cars, you grow up and all of a sudden the car just dies at a light. You're like, oh my God, I got to walk. No.
Yeah. Can I push this?
It's reprogramming your brain.
Yeah.
But I'll say, the time it was broke, we got 17 to 18 with it fixed 19 and a half. I'm like, okay, this doesn't suck, We bought it in January and we already have 6,500 miles on it already.
Wow.
Yeah, so it already went for its first oil change.
But then again, your wife does work surgeries in a hospital, folks.
Oh, no, this is 2 trips to North Carolina already.
Well, that's also where family is. And so she's been working the hospital, trying to take care of family, doing all of that as well as take care of you.
That's a good segue because you talked about how personal time, and taking some space. Well, my biggest fear has always been working on a Jeep, and all of a sudden, the twing, the piece flies off, and I go, oh, I have no idea where that landed. That's probably important. I'm scared to death of sometimes. I know it sounds stupid, but the small things.
Yeah, and I've seen that trait in you working with you.
Spark plugs have always scared me because I'm always scared about
they'll break off, and then what do you do?
That or getting them cross-threaded. So the other day I decided to show the LJ some love because again this is Operation Fix the LJ, and so if anybody knows this is not rehearsed. This is going to be Kevin's absolute pure 100% reactions.
Okay,
so I decided to do my spark plug. So Kevin had warned me.
Yourself?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. That's
me. Okay.
I bumped a connector trying to get the microphone at a comfortable level because I'm
Leather?
getting
Comfortable leather. Jeez Louise.
level.
Okay.
Level.
So one of the things we decided to do I decided to do, you when we did your wiring harness,
Yep.
you said, hey, this connector back here with the coil pack has always been a problem. So I prepared myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to leave it plugged in. So I take all 4 bolts off, take my air snorkels and all that kind of stuff off, and I get the coil up, set it and set it down, and I go, okay, cool, there it is, and none of the springs fell off. Good. So I get the spark plug wrench down there, and I, oh no, they're too tight. And so my fear of stripping plugs, quink, oh no, okay, they're coming out. So I'm like, I did all 6 right then and there.
Yeah,
broke them all loose, and believe me, some of these things, I'm going to have a conversation with the previous owner. So I take out the first Bosch, brand new.
It's going to do you any good to have a conversation with him. You got him out.
Yeah. So in 2016, I bought the LJ with 123,000 miles. It only has 145 now.
Yeah.
So I've only driven 20,000 miles in 3 years. Not like the JT. But anyways, the plugs were practically new. I'm like, I do not know the history. Let me go ahead and put new plugs in. So I have a problem now. I didn't take the coil out. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I still have all the bracketry. So I'm like, okay, getting my meaty paw in there. I use the thread stuffy stuff. I had to go buy because I couldn't find my anti-seize, so I had to go buy little packets of it. Anyways.
So you didn't call me, and I didn't tell you about using the hose trick for the plugs.
Well, I know about that. Okay. So I threaded in there, like, okay, it's going in. First one done, second one done, third one done, fourth one done, fifth one done.
That 6th one all the way up at the front.
No, this is only the back.
Okay, at the back.
That wasn't the problem.
Oh.
I put the anti-seize on, set it on the box on my fender, grab the wrench, rolls off, bang, onto the ground.
Broke the porcelain?
I pick it up and look at the electrode that's bent all the way down. Wait a minute, I bought double platinum plugs.
Okay.
I hold it up to the light and go, okay, there's a little bit of sunlight. I'm good to go.
What? Okay.
Where's my spark plug gapper?
Yep.
So I grab out my Craftsman flathead screwdriver, hold the spark plug onto the fender, jam the flathead screwdriver into the electrode, blood-eyed redneck it, and I eyeball it to the old plug going, that's about right.
We call that Talar.
Yeah.
The Talar
and
setting.
Of course, it's a little off, just a tiny little bit, and go, send it. I screwed it in, put everything in. Vroom, start up, doesn't miss. I'm like, yes.
Hey.
So I got all that back done. So then I went to go do the oil change. Mm-hmm. Now, sometimes because I'm trying to help out work, I let a young kid, Ryan, at my work do the oil change. Because again, I like to help out the small guy. So Ryan has a history of not paying attention. His first adventure was the hood was up on a BMW, and as it's going up on the lift, we have lights on a chain. So it goes vroom, up like that, and then I'm kind of like looking at that, and I'm like, and
it's going to catch it coming down.
Before it did it, I'm like going, Ryan, and he's staring at his phone. I'm like, Ryan, and he stops, and as the light goes, gung, 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 hooked on the hood, I'm like, dude. He goes, oh my god. I said, that's why we don't look at our phones while we're working on cars.
Yeah.
So we get the umbrella or the broomstick
out
and
hold
lower it down a little bit, and it goes. So anyways, he did the oil change on my Jeep.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I'm going to pause here for a second. I got a torn rotator cuff. So sometimes working on Jeeps is rather comical to watch me blood eye strength this thing.
Yeah.
Spark plugs included. Well, another person had done an oil change on the JK. Mm-hmm. I got out my torque wrench. Mm-hmm. 120 pounds to break the drain plug loose. Mm-hmm. Now, I make jokes at work when someone hears the air gun on the phone. They go, what are they? Oh, they're putting in a drain plug. So Mr. Ryan now is called Torque Specs. 138 pounds to get my drain plug off.
Because of him?
Yes.
And he used electric impact on it?
No, he actually said he used his wrench. I'm like, which ones?
Yeah.
Did you
double them up?
And I was polite. I said, look, man, I literally had the blood eye redneck strength. I was prying my body against the tire and the whole body to go. I had to get the long torque wrench out. So yes, people, I do own one.
He does.
But the point is, though, is that I'm like, are you kidding me?
Use it that often.
Well, I use it to break things.
Yeah.
So at this point, I'm like, again, I'm trying my best. So to the technicians out there, please be careful.
Yeah.
I had a little small talk with him, But that's when I learned something very important. One of the old guys there who had actually worked at Chrysler, he's like, when's the last time you replaced that drain plug? I'm like, well, it's the factory one. It still has the blue paint on it and all that. And he goes, they're supposed to be replaced every other oil change.
Well, whatever the manufacturer says, yes.
And I'm like, are you kidding? He goes, yeah, that's probably why it's seized up.
Yep, it was tightened to stop a drip, and it just gets a little tighter and a little tighter. And a little
every
tighter.
time. So I immediately went back to Ryan.
Yep.
And I apologized.
Well, yes and no. I mean, he still over tightened it. It's For example, my daughter, folks, she had a 05 TJ herself, a silver one, Rocky Mountain Edition, but she since got away from that because she just couldn't afford the fuel with the driving she does. So she ended up with a 2018 Honda
Civic.
That's right, Civic Sport. And you know that Honda has now mandated new washers every oil change.
Yeah.
You take the drain plug out, and they give you, and I went online, and sure enough, I bought a bag of like 20 of these little aluminum washers, and you put a new one on every oil change.
Yeah. When I did my Civic, did the same thing.
So, you know, that's the same thing with the Jeep. Actually, you know, now that you mention it, when I did my rear main seal on the TJ, one of the things I did was when I opened and took the pan down and cleaned everything, and I looked at the inside of that bung, I said, and I went ahead and bought a new oil pan plug. And it was, you could tell that the original one, the sealing surface had actually flared.
Yeah,
if you looked at the edge of it, it's smiling, you know.
And so that's why I went back and I apologized. So I ordered a new one.
Yep.
So next oil change, I'm going to have my breaker bar ready. And I'm going to learn my lesson. So
and then also is don't over tighten it yourself.
Yeah, well, and I didn't. I used the stubby on it because I've always used stubbies. But now that I know that, I'm like, okay, I need to be very, very careful of that.
Well, it's the same sort of thing with the oil filter, folks, and you've probably seen it 1,000 times. What's it say on the package? Almost every one of them.
Yeah, hand tight and then give it a 3/4 of a turn or half a turn.
It's usually 1/4 of a turn after gasket touches.
So you see, guys, when we talk about how some of us read instructions
and some don't,
some do read the. Well, I knew it was all hand tight only. I didn't spin it on with an impact in JB Weld.
And but no, it's
that's
just
room for a loop, guys.
Yeah, I'm going okay. Well, at least you didn't put it on with the band wrench, you know. If it's leaking, then you can go back and tighten it a little more.
Yeah.
And no, it will not. Yeah. Don't.
Do that with 2 O-rings.
My big one
sticks.
was having the double O-ring.
I hate that. We've all done it.
Now, you know, I just did the very first oil change in the new truck.
Right.
Just literally last week, which was kind of this, what am I doing? And we'll get to that in my segment. Yeah. But one of the things that was recommended, and it actually is a great idea on any oil filter that hangs down, which means it doesn't drain.
Yeah.
And some of the Jeeps did come with the 4 liters with the vertical oil filter. Some of them are at an angle. Mm-hmm. I actually, when I started draining the oil, because the filter on the big 6.7 diesels is a quart plus each. And yes, I do pre-fill the filter with oil before I put it back on.
That's smart.
But I take a little sharp awl and a mallet, and I go down there, and I punch not 1, but 2 holes in the bottom of the filter. And if you look at your filter, you'll see why. Because there's the central passage where it screws on, that is the oil supply, to the engine. And then the oil comes in from the pump around the holes that are around the outside in that little rubber flat valve or silicone flat valve that prevents drain back. Mm-hmm. Well, if you only punch it in the middle, it takes forever to drain because it's got to drain back through the filter paper.
Right.
Or if you punch on the outside, you got to take forever because it's got to drain through the filter paper.
Right.
If you punch one straight up the middle and one off to one side, they both drain at the same time. And in fact, I learned it even quicker that, okay, and it drains, and then all of a sudden you kind of see that, wait a minute, it's slowing down. Oh, is it almost?
There's the
Let
castle.
me punch another one up high on the filter. And these aren't big holes. These are just little sharp holes that it really was just a tap, tap, tap. And boy, the oil ran out, and I let it dribble. And guess what? I was able to pull off a quart plus oil filter and not wear any.
That's the best part. And that's the cool thing about having wives that work in surgery centers, because you get all the shop rags you can.
Yeah, well, actually, I have an interesting blue-colored tarp that's paper on one side, blue, plastic, non-permeable, bonded to white paper on the other side, and little tape things around it that were opened but not used.
Yes.
And so they make really good splash mats.
They do. They make the best, other than your face. But and then the one thing I kind of also did too is that when I got everything done with the Jeep, I decided to show it some little love. And I'm not gonna lie to you, we're actually a couple of times I reached out to a couple of places about vinyl wrapping the Jeep and a couple other things, and we got the new Gladiator. I'm like, ceramic coatings sound really cool, but
I know
they're
I got a price
expensive.
for Susan's car was almost $1,500, $1,800 to ceramic coat.
Yeah, and what the truth is that it's in the detail. In other words, you got to make sure you have a completely clean surface. So you're basically paying to have that thing detailed twice. And I get it, and I'm cheap. Kevin knows that. But I was walking through the auto parts store, and I saw this big neon Mountain Dew level of car wax. It's the new Meguires synthetic ceramic wax. And I'm like, wonder if it's any good, this stuff that I use. Because I'm a carnauba kind of guy. I used to use Zymol. You could drink it. It was vitamin B, aloe, carnauba wax. There was no petroleum distillates in it.
Jeep's skin soft, supple, and nice to touch.
It was. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I love that stuff. Well, I'm like, you know what? Let me look at it. It was $15.99. I'm like, let me do some research. And I looked, and everyone says, the one guy was using a glossometer and say, this is not real ceramic. And other people are like, yeah, it's not real ceramic, but I'm not paying $900. I'm going to give it a shot. And I'm like, well, okay, I just waxed Dory's Jeep with a certain brand, and it's not beating, and it's only been, a month.
Yep.
All right, well, let me try this stuff. So I grabbed it, and I read the instructions, and I'm the kind of guy that glarbs and weighs way too much wax.
Right.
Okay, I'm that guy.
And then you buff forever trying to get it off.
Well, here's the crazy thing. They warn you, it does not haze. It literally, you wipe on, you let it sit for 3 minutes, and then you buff off with a clean rag. But it's not going to haze up and dry. I'm like, that's weird. And they said, look, if you got a big vehicle, start on the one side, go all the way around. By the time you get back, it's been 3 minutes. Cool. I'm going to do the LJ first, because that way if I screw it up, I'm only screwing up, 16-year-old paint and not the wife's new Jeep, and I live with it around the rest of my life. So I'm like, all right, you know what? I tried the LJ, and I went around it, and I did the first coat, and it looked a lot better. I'm like, oh, cool. So this is actually going to work. So I went ahead and did Dory's Jeep, and it popped. I mean,
So you said coat. Do you multi-coat this stuff?
You multi-coat. You have to use 2 coats. And I've only done one on the LJ so far, which is
folks, he pulled in with the LJ, and I was like, what did you do to your Jeep? Because the depth, his is red, and it was a bit of a faded red, and it really looks like he cut and buffed or had a respray done.
Yeah.
And then when you see the dents that are still in the hood, it's not a respray.
Well, I just paint over that anyways. But no, the point is that, because it's red, I didn't take the best care of it, because I hate the color red.
Yeah.
But again, sorry, Tony at Jeep Talk Show. I know your favorite color is red, but no. But the point is, though, is that I took my time with it, and it came out great. Well, Dory's Jeep, oh my goodness,
because it's a new finish to start with.
Holy cats! I was amazed, and of course, we're coming to love bug season. The front of that Jeep was covered in love bugs. The rain we had the other night knocked them all off.
Oh my God.
Okay.
All right. So what's it? I'm writing this down, folks. What is it?
Meguires Synthetic Ceramic Wax. It smells beautiful. But even on Dory's Jeep, when I went ahead...
It could smell like dog.
Well, no, it does smell
and
so cool.
I'd still use it if it has that kind of a...
Well, the cool thing, too, is when I washed Dory's Jeep, because I haven't washed the LJ in 2 weeks.
Okay.
That's just the rain knocking that stuff off. The LJ, when I went and washed it on Saturday night, the love bugs, they didn't wash right off like they did in the LJ, because I think the paint was just flaking off. But I only lightly scrubbed with a car wash, because I can only use a car wash right now.
Right.
With the car wash brush. The love bugs came off with the car wash brush.
That's pretty incredible.
And those are super stupidly soft brushes.
Now, for the rest of the world out there, let me fill you in. Anybody in Florida knows what we're talking about here. Love bugs are a small insect that look kind of like lightning bugs up in the northern regions.
They come from the bowels of hell.
and they fly around linked in mating positions. So they are,
If you're
quote
gonna
unquote,
go with a smile.
yeah, exactly. But they swarm, and I do mean swarms. Like you can be driving down the road and take out 1,000 literally in one
It
swarm.
sounds like rain hitting the windshield.
It is. The problem is their natural predatory defense mechanism is their bodies are acidic. Yeah. And so if you leave them on metallic surfaces or etchable surfaces like most paints, they will eat a hole in the clear coat.
In literally a couple days.
In a couple of days. And so right now during love bug season, people are out washing off their vehicles. Some people daily, some people every other day.
Yeah.
I'm probably bad because I let it go 2 or 3 days, but the front of the truck, which is what I drive for the most part, there's only a small area of paint. The rest of it's all chrome and plastic. So they usually don't hurt because it's not even real chrome. It's the plastic chrome. So, but even I get out there periodically with the bucket and the car wash brush and the hose and wet them down, get them soft again, and scrub them off.
So, it's no fun, but it's one of those things. It's living in Florida.
It is.
It's one of the seasons.
It is. So, but just so that everybody else out there knows what the heck we're talking about. If you ever come down here and feel like you're being attacked, and they don't bite, they don't sting, they but they're everywhere.
Yeah, and what's funny when they're joined together for a split second, they look like a wasp.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting there at work and one flies, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Just a love bug.
It's just a little tiny, but they do go splat, splat, splat. Oh, and they're also adhesive.
Yeah.
If you try and get them off with your washer fluid.
Yeah.
They just
you literally have to hit the second it hits your windshield, washer fluid.
Yeah. Otherwise, it will glue itself down, and then when you wipe it, it smears, and you're like.
Yeah,
I've seen people. Well, it's regular here on the highways during heavy. They have to pull over and scrub. I carry. There's a bug formula of Windex, believe it or not.
Yeah, I have the Rain X bug.
And I carry that with me as well as rags during love bug season anytime I travel anywhere because you'll have to pull off and clean your windshield because the wipers aren't going to do it.
That was the funny thing at the car wash the other night is I have one of those old Adobe scrubbers.
Yep.
I use for just the rest of they came off really easy, but the windshield I just kind of went, oh man,
it's not going to come off that so easy.
I'm like, I wonder if this wax will work on the windshield.
Rain X actually works pretty good to keep them from sticking.
That's what I use, but they came off with the Adobe rather easy on the windshield. So, but I think we're going to take a quick little break because I think we're going to have some really tech heavy, really cool stuff coming up because Kevin is not done delving into the wiring yet. No, so we'll be right back after this commercial message. Guy here just with a couple quick announcements. Again, 2 new Patreons, both Mike and Brian. Thank you very much for your support. That means the world to us. Helps keep the lights on. Speaking of keeping the lights on, special thanks to Mark over at WranglerFix.com. Their generous support helped keep the show computer running. And again, it's not lost on me that they also work with Jeep computers to help keep your Jeep running. As always, check out the 4x4 Radio Network. Lots of cool information and shows there to check out. And last but certainly not least, our YouTube channel. Lots of great information and the fact we can prove that both of us have the face for radio. So enough chatting, time to get back to the action, so enjoy.
Hey, Jeeples. Couple of things. Number one, you may or may not have checked out our YouTube video. It was not a limited, it was open for general, and that was kind of an over-the-shoulder shot, and I wish we'd thought of it when we actually started, so I apologize for that, rather than after I'd already gotten completely frustrated. But for those that didn't see the video, we've mentioned before that I kept blowing fuses on my backup lights, and Scott volunteered to come over. He'll probably never do that again, and give me a hand.
I learned a lot.
And we literally took my 05 TJ's engine harness, which covers from the forwardmost is the temperature sensor at the radiator, or just at the radiator hose, to the gas tank.
Yes.
And everything in between, running across the top of the engine, both sides, down the back spine of the transmission, across the transfer case, leaping over to the frame rails, and then disappearing on top of the gas tank.
Over the transfer case and through the frame rail to the gas tank we go.
Exactly. And we pulled it because the short, I had located it in the area of it And for those of you with TJs and LJs, you'll know when you look at the back head of the engine, right where it's tucked up against the firewall, you see, depending on your model, either 2 or 3 big connectors on the firewall and 2 to 3 big, and I do mean big, like an inch in diameter, wiring looms that disappear behind the engine going down.
Kind of like the pennies in your couch.
Yeah, and that's where the short was.
Yeah.
And there's not enough room to see the wires, much less to do a repair.
That was not a good place for short tempers. I'm sorry. I got to keep these puns current. I'm sorry.
He does. So we pulled the whole harness. Took about an hour. Scott helped. We
well, let's be honest. I kind of hindered more than I helped.
No, you were there to hand me tools and using my trick and go back in the old shows about getting the connectors apart. The safety red clip and that stuff will come apart even when they're completely full of dirt if you take your time and use compressed air
with safety goggles.
Because you will spit dirt everywhere. But
usually back in your face.
The reason they don't open means they're full of dried dust and dirt from some of your wheeling trips. Yeah. And I've figured out right now is you can honestly answer the question, well, does he really wheel? Well, go try and disconnect one of the safety clips on the underbody harness. And if it opens, dude.
No. Do you really wheel? Check our Instagram page where we took apart the loom and dirt was falling out.
Well, that was mine. Yeah, literally, I had to stop about every 15 minutes and use my electric leaf blower to blow the work table off because of the amount of dirt that fell. And I'm not exaggerating, folks.
No, he had to do it.
The amount of dirt, every time I'd open a piece of split loom, it would just shower.
Yeah.
If the split loom was together, a lot of it just crumbled.
I was hoping for pennies and change, though, to be honest with you.
Yeah. And long story short, we went through the whole thing. Found not only the original problem that was blowing my fuses on my backup lights, but found some questionable work that had been done by the previous owner, replacing just a minor wire.
Yeah, just the one that runs the fuel pump.
The fuel pump wire. It had been apparently the first one that died by being worn through.
Right.
And it had been replaced. And the technician that did the work, maybe the owner, maybe a technician, I don't know, had decided, it's too much trouble to put it back in the loom. So they just ran the wire loose hanging outside. So there was always this mystery red wire. Well, it turns out to had a pretty significant purpose.
Well, let's cut it, see what happens. Cheap won't start.
We ended up, I ended up replacing that with the correct gauge wire, too. That was one of the things is what they had used the wrong gauge.
Yeah.
So that was a fun little project, and then reloomed it properly, and then reinstalled it, and made my first major foobar. It was more humorous than a problem, though, because Scott was wondering if I would be honest, and I'll be honest. By the time we were taking the harness off, and I realized that the manual didn't really show it, but that harness included 4 wires that went to the gas tank.
Right.
Your fuel pump feed, ground wire for the fuel pump, your power to the fuel level sender, and then the data line that comes back from the fuel level sender. And I just filled the freaking fuel tank, not knowing that I was going to have to run that, back there. So I made the command decision. It's my Jeep, and my parts bin includes various sets of the weatherproof weather pack connectors.
Yep.
That are sealed. They're the same kind of connectors that are used by most of the automotive manufacturers. Mm-hmm. And I had some nice 4-prong weather packs. So I decided to cut the harness there, right at the back of the transfer case where all the other connectors were already terminated, and said, well, if it's good enough for these, it's good enough for those.
That's the funny
See where
thing.
This is going?
It's funny because I said, are you sure you want to do this? Click. Yeah. Went the nippers. Click. Yeah, we're committed now. I'm like, oh, my goodness.
Wiring makes Scott nervous.
Well, wiring plus me equals fire.
Well, that's true. And I'm working on wires to the gas tank, no less.
Oh. Well, the funny thing is coming up. That's the funny part.
But the funny part was, and you probably see where I'm going with this, we got all excited, and the harness was done on the table, including the connector.
Slight pause. This is why the whiteboards are important.
Yes, they are. And slid it down in and reached around the transmission and pushed in the clips that I could get into and all the other things, got it mounted, made sure everything was plugged in. And I had Scott checking me there as we're going, connector by connector by connector.
Are you sure you did this? Are you sure
you did that? And then locking them all down and hop in there and go, okay, it's done. Cross fingers. And it goes, click, click.
And as he's doing that, I see his shoulders sink. And then I look down the rear tire and see the wires and going, uh-oh.
And then it hit me. Even before he said it, I was like, and he goes, no. And I turn around and look. No, that's not that bad of a swear word. That's not the one I actually used, Scott. You're going to beep it anyway. Okay. Anyhow.
Still have to beep it.
I turned around and looked, and there was the lead from the tank that I had so carefully left draped over the driver's rear tire so I wouldn't forget to put the end on it and plug it in. So guess what? I did anyway. So I walked over and kind of took a deep sigh and kind of laughed at myself, because if you don't laugh, you're going to cry.
And that's the funny thing is, like, when you got out of the Jeep and you looked at it, I'm looking down, you look down, it was funny. You went, you made this cute little laugh like,
yeah, I screwed up. I know it. And so the good news was it was, 3 minutes to put the end of the connector on. Clicked it all in, and then, folks, because I depressurized the fuel system, for those of you that have the YJs and the TJs with the electric pumps, actually any of the models, there's a restart procedure that if you really want it to start and not mess up, you turn the key on without starting. Just turn it on, and you'll hear the pump go for 3 seconds. And when it goes off, turn the key back off, turn it on again for 3 seconds. And the third time you should hear, and that is, it's finally refilled the lines you just ran empty.
Yeah.
And then at the fourth one, I said, well, now we go, and turn the key. Man, she roared to life. And I'll tell you what, it runs better than it's run in years.
Yeah.
Just taking all those connectors apart and cleaning everything probably got rid of corrosion on the contacts, and the computer's probably going, hey, I'm getting real data.
Yeah. Not just, I'm guessing.
Yeah. And, of course, we disconnected all the ground leads from the ground points, so they got reconnected, so I have good, clean grounds. So overall, that was an interesting project, and if you want to see it, you can check out the YouTube video. You can just go to YouTube and look up On the Trail with Kevin and Scott, and you'll see it there. It's marked for the wiring harness. I'm not going to tell you it's anything uberly exciting, but everybody says they want to see what we do. Well,
there you go.
There you go.
Well, the cool thing is it gave us confidence. So, it gave you you already had the confidence. It gave me confidence to sit there and learn more about wiring, which is the next little adventure.
Yeah. So where do we go from there? Well, we've talked about Scott, and what did Scott do? Well, just in case we hadn't talked about it before, I don't know if we have, I'm retired again. The job that I had, I just wasn't suited for. And so, I actually resigned from that position and went back to being retired, and kind of think I'm happy being retired.
Yeah.
But then again, this whole worldwide situation has developed, and now we're, home quarantined. And while I took that rather loosely,
we're exiled for the good of the realm.
Okay, Gandalf. You sit around, and I helped friends that I knew were healthy, and they knew I was healthy. And, I did things at the barn where all there was me and the horses kind of thing. And then you start going, okay, I need something to do. I do not sit still well.
No.
Scott knows me. And I started looking at the TJ going, okay, well, I got things I got to fix, but I really didn't want to fix. It was just a PETA to deal with. And, well, you know what? You get bored enough, you'll fix things. And you start chasing problems. So first thing I did is, I promised our listeners the review of the Stableseat system.
Yes.
For the slider seats in a TJ. 6-7 months ago. Whoopsie.
If you can tell, we're on a shoestring budget and shoestring brain power.
Yeah. And so first thing I did is I went ahead and I tested them. I went ahead and put these things on. Now, what they are, folks, if you don't remember, is for the 97 to 2006 Wranglers, TJs and LJs, doesn't matter. If you go look at your front seats, down,
like mine,
down where the sliders are, where the tracks are, there's a little white wheel, and then there's a little blackish gray wheel. One of them rolls, and the other one's a fixed stop. You may not see them, and you may only see a little what looks like a rivet sticking out of the upper sliding portion of the seat. That's because your wheel broke and left town, which mine had done. And so, and if you're saying, well, I don't know if mine had it. Yeah, it probably did. Is yours difficult to tilt and then slide forward together?
Does your seat go
Exactly.
down the road?
Is it rattled? Is it? Well, the problem was that little stud's a rivet. And so there was no easy way, to fix that. You just had to put a new seat base in. And that gets a little expensive.
Some people talked about like having 3D printed ones. That's not the same kind of plastic.
Not the same kind of plastic. So this company, I saw an ad, and I went ahead and took a shot and ordered one, and it's called Stableseat.com, just all one word, STABLESEAT.com. And they have come up with a neat little setup, and you can buy a single seat kit for 97s to 2002 or a two-seat kit that covers from the 03 to 06s. They're different diameter of little rollers. And I was like, okay, so they advertise essentially one tool, and that's only if you're changing the stop roller on the non-sliding base portion, and that's held on with a little bolt head that uses a T40 Torx. In my case, because I'm not stock seats, I can't do them in the Jeep for the inner ones. I can only do the outer ones by the doors. So you have to take the 4 bolts out and tip it up. But that they give you a new washer for that one, a new roller. And the neat one, though, is that rivet, that little T-headed rivet that usually is missing. There's no way to get it out. And even if it's there, it's your little white wheel is busted. Yeah. They came up with a little 2-piece system, and the inner piece is a softer rubber, and it's got a slit in it, and you can open it and slide it over the head of the rivet, or you can slide it down like a C over the thing, and it'll snap shut. And then there's an outer collar that's the harder plastic, that's the wear surfaces. The inside of that has this same groove pattern that the outside of the split piece does. And you push it on, and it ratchets on kind of like a zip tie. Click, 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 click. And it's on.
You're done.
You're done.
Yeah.
And my seat actually tilts and folds the way it's supposed to.
And that's where I'll take, because Kevin's like, try the seat, and I did, and I'm like, holy cats, this is so much nicer than mine.
It doesn't rattle. It doesn't kind of move around. So, folks, that one's tested, tried, and it actually does what they said. Now,
and it worked for us.
And longevity-wise, we'll tell you, okay? We will keep an eye on it. And I'll be honest with you, if you hear nothing, that means it still works. I'll only let you know if it breaks, because so far, it's probably been in there now 3 or 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. The seat it tips and slides like new. So if you're having that problem on the seats, or if you've got that kind of wiggle under your butt feeling, when you're going around corners, check those bushings. But go to their website, take a look, and they tell you how to check it, and you can see, and they've better pictures and instructions. Yeah, it was really neat. And you don't have to change the stop roller that's under the T40 nut if yours is fine. Yeah. I did on mine, because one of mine was broken on the driver's side. It was still on there, but it was split, so it was only a matter of time. The one on the passenger side, which gets all the flip usage from everybody getting in and out of the backside, that was long gone. So that was
missing like my hair.
Yeah, so that was one of the things I fixed. Now, the other thing that I'll bring up, we talked about my wiring harness. Yeah. And one of the things that Jeep uses, they use a whole lot of these neat little zippy tie things, okay? And Scott's grinning at me.
Yes, I am. He's in my wheelhouse, brother.
Yeah, and if you've worked on your Jeep electrically at all, you know that there's these zip ties that aren't regular zip ties. Yeah. They push, one end of them has a little fitting that you snap into a hole, like a push button, and it locks into the hole, and you can tighten the zip tie. Right. Well, the back side of that harness going down the transmission, that's the only thing that holds it in place. Yeah. And I'm going to parts stores, and I'm online, and I'm looking at Amazon, and I actually get to the point of looking at my factory service manual to see what they're called, and it just says retaining clip.
And here's the interesting thing. They're only sold with the wiring harnesses.
Yeah. So we thought.
Right. Here's the asterisk.
And I'm just going, there has got to be And I've learned a long time ago, when you're searching the interweb, the hardest part of the battle is knowing what something's called by the manufacturer so that it comes up in the search engine.
It's so funny you say this because where I'm working now, we talked about this thing before, is a fan clutch.
Yeah.
You're typing in fan clutch. No, it's
Nothing.
a viscous fluid coupler.
Yes.
Okay. Master window switch. Mm-hmm. You're typing in window switch. Doesn't come up. Type in only the word master, and it comes up.
You get it. So, folks, I'm not going to go through the long, arduous hunt here. But those units, if you need them, are readily available. You can get them through Amazon. You can get them through McMaster-Card. You can get them all over the place if you type in, and I'm not making this up, folks.
He's not.
Fir tree mount zip tie.
Those 5 little golden words.
Fir, not fur as in animal fur, but fur as in tree. So FIRTREEMOUNT zip tie.
Yeah.
Okay. And you get all kinds of them, and they'll give you different diameters and sizes and cable lengths and all kinds of neat materials. By the way, if you're getting it, get nylon because that's the high temperature ones.
Right.
Not the PVC. It was like, who comes up with these names? But when you look at the little push-in,
it
kind of looks like a little fir tree upside down, and then it's a mount, so it's got the button head and zip tie to hold the wires.
Yeah, we call them tree clips.
Tree clips. Okay, well, I never found them under tree clips, but I found them as fir tree mount zip ties. Who knew? Who knew? Another thing that came along, you're going to get a series of these, and these are kind of fun things to play with. And we did a little of this on the video for the wiring harness, but I used my own wiring harness as a guinea pig. Mm-hmm. If you guys have seen this newer technology in making splices.
There's a Facebook video about them, too, coming up.
There is. And I just decided that, well, I don't know if they're too good to be true or not, because if they're true, they're really going to be killer. And have you guys out there, have you seen these videos and advertisements for the low temperature heat shrink tubing, solder, seal, adhesive combos?
Right.
And you kind of go, really? You know? Well, my neighbor got some. He's into the motorcycle, or he says he's just too good not to try. So we played with a few on his motorcycle. And based on that, I ordered a set. And we made those repairs aforementioned to my harness with them, but not until I'd made a sample wire. And I took one of those, and it's against my grain. I am used to doing a certain kind of a flare the ends, push them together, twist them to make a mechanical, solder them, maybe crimp and solder them, then heat shrink with marine grade, yada, 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 yada.
Yeah,
process.
He's quite the retentive.
Well, I worked on boats also quite a bit, and you can't let water get anywhere. And you know what? If it works in a boat in a wet environment, it'll work in a Jeep in a wet environment. So anyway, we tried this. I just got myself some chunks of wire, and all you do is strip about 1/4 inch off the ends of the two of them, and you slide the heat shrink over one end, this combo, the right size, and then you kind of shove the other one in. So they're either side by side, or if you really want to do a little bit better, you kind of flare them a little bit so they intermesh a little, and then you heat it with a heat gun.
Yeah.
And
Viola.
It shrinks down, and you got to heat it enough. I think part of the problem some people have, they don't heat the low temperature solder till it runs. You got to watch the solder ball and make sure it runs, and then let it cool. Don't move it, because it'll take a while for the heat to go down and the thing to solidify, because you can pull it apart. But once it cooled down, I tried to pull the joint apart, and it hurt. I'm not saying you couldn't break it, but you were cutting into your skin.
Yeah. You're garroting yourself. And that's the thing, because we all joke about me and my big beefy paws and baby Huey. So he handed me to me before we recorded and said, hey, try this guy. I'm like, all right. Hey, ow, 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 ow. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good.
It makes a heck of a seal. And I checked it for electrical conductivity, did an ohms test on it, and it was virtually invisible in terms of ohm lossage, which electrically is important to make sure that your current flows through it just as well.
Yeah.
Now, the low temperature solder, I think, melts I don't know what it melts at, but at 230, 240 degrees as opposed to the higher temperatures. So I wouldn't use it on a wire that would be next to an exhaust manifold, but I wouldn't put a wire there anyway because it's at least as good as the insulation. Not saying that they don't end up there, Scott. He's over here just...
No. I'm. You said that, and I remember a repair that was done on another person's vehicle that came in with JB Weld around the exhaust pipe, and it just didn't work.
No, it's not going to work. So I'll tell you what. So far, I'm impressed.
Yeah.
The jury's out on the longevity, and I will tell you that enough of me still has those doubts about, seemed almost too good to be true. So even though I did this heat shrink with adhesive, with solder that's supposed to be sealed, after it had cooled, I went ahead and slid my regular marine grade heat shrink over top of it and did an outer jacket on that as well.
It can't hurt.
No, it really can't. But the neat thing was it makes such a neat inline splice without the bulk that you usually see from all the other methods that people use. And it's pretty cheap. It's very cost effective, and I have done a few other repairs. I helped our friend Brian out, was doing some work on his, changing out to the, he wanted to take his TJ, he cut the fenders, so he needed to put the front grille lights in.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so we soldered up all the harness using these connectors on his as well, and he has had no problem. So this is another one. We'll see what the long-term test is, but the short-term results are, hey, pretty neat stuff.
That's one of the really cool things when we talk about electrical wiring, because like people like myself, I put the LEDs in my Jeep, and everyone talks about LED lighting and all this kind of stuff and how to properly splice these connectors. And again, anything you can do to help, again, the water intrusion. We have a high failure rate, especially on JKs and other Jeeps, where water gets through, corrodes, and you get the fast blink. You have other problems. I had it on the JK.
Yep.
They had a Delta Skybar light bar that had cap lights in the top.
Yep.
Dory's right turn signal always kept blowing.
Yep.
And turns out that because they used a cheap vampire clip type splice, it caused a lot of corrosion. So taking that time to add, if you're going to add LEDs or any kind of lighting to your Jeep, or do certain wiring, it's always best to keep that water intrusion from happening. So again, it might seem like a lot of money, or not really a lot of money.
Well, not anymore, but originally a lot of effort and detail.
But the thing is that when you start chasing these wet electrical gremlins,
oh yeah,
I had a guy at work today with his power probe out, had problems with an alternator on an Altima that wasn't energizing the field. But why wasn't it doing that? So take a little bit of time, spend a little bit extra money. You know what I mean?
So take a look at those things. There's plenty of videos out now on them, and some pro, some con. The ones that I saw that were negative on it, was one gent was not sure that the solder doesn't seem to be going as well as I like it to do. And then he did one of his solder joints that he did, and he was using way too much solder, in my opinion. If you flood the wire with solder, you create a hard spot. That then subject to vibration and breakage. And so that's where soldering got a bad name, and why people want to do crimps only, because they believe that, well, solder creates a hard spot and it'll break. Well, I got news for you. Even your crimp connector is a hard spot for the wire.
Yeah.
But these things, if you simply heat them until their little ring of solder shrinks, and you can see it flow into the wires, and then you quit and let it cool, it doesn't completely form a rigid block of solder, but everything's stuck together, and it doesn't try to make the solder joint. I think this is the technology that works, is the solder is there for electrical conductivity only. It's not there as your mechanical. The mechanical is the fact that the heat shrink tube has adhesives on both ends and bonds to the outer jacket, sealing
it and all that.
And so the combination is you end up with something that has near original wire characteristics, which is really the ideal splice.
Yes.
So, like I said, we'll keep an eye on it. Now, Scott, you mentioned flashers.
Yes, I did, because we went for a drive in my LJ when we did the wiring, and I turned my turn signal on, and bling, 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 and Kevin, and it's funny too. It's like driving with your dad when he tells you to fix something, and he gets in and he just goes, "We need to do this." I'm like, I know. And he's like, I just now got the control arms after a year done. Okay,
I know. I realized that, and I just said it, didn't I? But here, what I was going to use it for was not a segue to beat on you, but a segue on me.
Yeah.
Folks, I had the similar problem that most people do. I have the Savvy taillights and was in the process of doing 100% LED conversion to the TJ. And I've mentioned this in prior shows that I got just so far, and then the blinker would go. It wouldn't even hyper flash. It would just buzz.
It's like the wrong answer on a video game.
Exactly. And I haven't had four-way blinkers for a couple of years now because...
Which is weird. My four-ways blink just fine.
Yeah. Well, you don't have 100% LEDs yet. There's a couple of things going on there. So we're going to cover a couple of those pieces here if we don't run too long. One of them is the flasher.
Yeah.
And so wait a minute. I have bought 2 different LED flashers. I'm not going to mention the manufacturers, but they are name brand manufacturers. And they would handle the Savvy LED rear lights.
Right.
But as soon as I changed out the front bulbs, they failed. They would go into hyper blink. Or buzz box, as I call it, because it wasn't a hyper. It was a this is too much caffeine and sugar buzz. So I started doing some digging. And I found out that there's not 2 kinds of flashers, Scott. There's 3.
Really?
Yep. There is a regular loaded flasher, and I don't mean it's drunk, that uses incandescent bulb loads to heat up a bimetallic strip.
Right.
To open the contacts, and then as it cools, it closes the contacts, and then opens and closes. So just like the old thermostats for your house furnace, they needed a certain electrical load.
Correct.
If they pulled current, if there was insufficient load, the bimetallic wouldn't heat up as much, so it wouldn't go as far, so you'd get the rapid flash. And that was your clue that you had a burnt bulb, because you weren't pulling as much current,
right?
And therefore you had a fast click. And it became an issue that it was such a great idea that DOT made it a law that on-road flashers had to have the hyper flash to alert you that you had a bad turn signal bulb and we're not signaling other traffic. That's the old flasher we all know and love and hate. Start out in that round can for those of us that are back from the old days, and then move to the little black square relay type box.
It's funny the round can look like the high beam switch.
Yep. Now, after that, you can get an LED flasher. And everybody goes, oh, yeah, I'll put an LED flasher in there. Well, turns out that that's a low load, not a no load LED flasher.
Right.
It can, because LEDs don't pull enough current to trigger the hyper flash. Okay. Well, actually, they don't pull enough triggers to trigger the mechanical flash. So if you used a regular flasher with LEDs in the rear, you'd get hyper flash.
Right.
It wouldn't be no load, but it'd still be a hyper, so because it thinks the rear taillights are burned out. Don't even try and plug in LEDs all the way around on a regular flasher. It just won't do anything.
Yeah.
It'll come on and that's it. It'll never heat up the bimetallic strip enough to break contact to flash. The LED ones will do it, but they still need a little bit of load. And they need that to know if the bulb is working, and therefore when you go all LED, they either buzz or hyper flash because there's still not enough load, because those comply with the DOT rules for hyper flashing to alert you if your bulbs are out. That rule's not a bad rule, don't get me wrong, but it really isn't applicable to the newer vehicles that already come factory with LED, because LEDs are multiple elements and don't usually die all at once. They die element by element by element and get dimmer, giving you plenty of warning and other drivers that your lights aren't working.
Also, too, a lot of the Chrysler vehicles, like my Charger, is all LED, and even our cars are all LED. It's on a CAN bus style system.
Right.
So if it does go, you'll get a warning message.
Get a little message. Well, it turns out there is a company out there that makes an off-road only, so it doesn't have the hyper flash at all. They took the hyper flash out, and it is a turn 4-way. It's a 5-pin flasher. It's Gold Coast Distributors, better known as GCD. It's available on Amazon. So it's a little expensive. It's about $30, a little under 30, but it will drive a 100% LED system. Now, fair warning. It is labeled off-road only. And if you're doing it, you technically could be pulled over, and I'm not sure it would happen, but a DOT officer could give you. For me, the LED system is much brighter, much more effective, and this runs the LED, including the four ways. So I am now 100% LED on Slightly Altered.
Right.
And Scott was out there when I turned them on and about peeled his eyeballs with my yellow.
Your front ones are rather impressive, sir.
Well, I'm trying to make sure people see me. I drive a black-on-black Jeep. Rainy nights in Florida, people don't see the Jeep.
Yeah, I mean, and plus the radar reflective paint, the hover mode. I mean, I'm sorry, cough. None of that.
God, he's got an imagination.
I got an imagination. I'm not the one with alien technology in his Jeep out there.
I don't have
Speaking
alien.
of which, if you do see the video,
Yeah.
you get a little Easter egg, an under the hood peek of Slightly Altered.
Well, that's true. You can kind of see the intake system, and everything is very much earthbound technology, just
off
for
the
some
shelf
very smart people. And shout out to Kenny Hawk and for the intake on mine. Now, the last thing I'm going to touch on, well, no, there's actually two. So let's stay with the electrical real quick. The other thing that I'm going to go, you know what, maybe I'll leave the side marker to the next show because I'm running a little long on this. So I'm gonna talk to you guys on the next show about an electrical quirk that Chrysler recognized decades ago and made it a feature rather than a problem. How's that for a teaser?
I like that.
However, that feature has become a problem for those of us trying to put LED marker lights in TJs and earlier vehicles.
Right.
So we'll talk about that on the next show. The last thing that I did while trying to stay socially distanced from friends was many years ago, about 2014 at Sheriff's Jeep Fest up in Georgia. I was with everybody, Scott included, and managed to do some crazy stuff on the mountainside. And my inclinometer, which had been mounted to the defroster grill of my Jeep, tilted and shook so violently it snapped the little plastic grate in my defroster. And so I've been driving around with broken out little, it's got this little square grid mesh pattern
that still has wide open spaces for everything to fall into it.
Right, that's gapped up. And it's been bugging me for years, but I've never found the right answer. And Scott can tell you the part number and the price if you want to replace the little vent clip top piece.
It's $124
for this little strip that goes across the top of your dash. And I'm cheap. And I happen to be over at Big Box Blue.
Writing down the time code. You never say those words.
Yeah. And I'm back there for other things to try and fix other details. And I was over in the gutter section. Okay, I was looking for some sealant and some flashing for a project on the house here. And something caught my eye. And I mean, I stopped and spun and backed up. Beep, beep. No, this was more like peeling rubber in reverse. Exactly. And there's a product out there that's I think it's called gutter mesh.
Right.
And it comes in a near gloss, but let's call it a bright satin black mesh. It's aluminum. It's thin. It got small. He's got a smirk on his face. Go ahead.
I do.
Get it out of you.
No, we're going to affectionately call it. Jeez, I didn't even get the joke out. He laughed.
Excuse me.
We're gonna affectionately call it stealth black.
Okay, whatever works for you.
No, blingy stealth black.
So anyway, there's this 3-foot long piece of black mesh, and it's a small grid diamond plate, for lack of a better description. Not plate, diamond mesh.
It's super tiny though.
It's the openings are probably only about 1/8 to 3/16, but it's very neatly done. It's very nice, and like I said, I found it at Big Blue in the gutter section, and it was a whopping $3.99 for a 3-foot section. It's 3 foot long and about 8 inches across with a little bend, and it's aluminum. And I'm like, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. This is what I've been looking for. And then I'm running around going, okay, what glues to this vinyl, this plastic cover? I don't know. Okay, I got some plastic super glue, and then I got some plastic grade goop glue, and I figured I can cut it oversized and bond it to the bottom.
Right.
I didn't need to buy the glues. Because lo and behold, folks, I got home and I'm like, I'm excited because this is fixing something that I've been staring at every time I drive, and I look over and there's gaping holes in the dash.
Right.
And all right, so I pulled the piece off and take it over, and I start carefully taking a razor knife and, actually what I did is I took side cuts and cut all the remaining pieces that weren't broken off, and then used a sharp razor knife to very carefully cut the stubs off smooth and flush with the rest of it. Don't sand plastic. I know people would. I actually used the heat gun then from underneath to warm the plastic up until it just started to gloss over, and then went away and let it cool back down. And it made, you can't even see where I cut the nubs off. And then I start, okay, great. Let me get this thing and get some measurements, because you do have to have a little rolled edge. There's not a lot of room under the bottom, but there's enough that if you use the rolled edge and trim just not even a quarter inch, an eighth of an inch of that roll to help it tuck in. And as I'm going along there and trimming it to fit and cutting this little strip, it's probably about 2 inches wide, and I think it was 17 inches long, to lay underneath there, and I'm looking at how I'm going to glue it in, and I realize, okay, I've got to trim it around these little plastic injection studs that are sticking down from the underside, where the plastic had been injected into the, wait a minute.
They're like plastic stalactite.
Those aren't injection studs. They're not clipped. Chrysler intended to have the option to put something under here. I realized that they were push-on mounting clips. Mm-hmm. And I'm going, oh my, let me run back over to the toolbox, and I dig in, and I have one of the little bulk packs of the different push-on self-locking washers.
Yeah, they're also called speed nuts for those
well, these aren't threaded with a twist, but they're still the speed nut. They're push-ons. Yeah. And lo and behold, the 3mm ones were an exact fit. All I had to do was, after I cut the thing so it cleared everything but left about a 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch past the edge of it, and fit it down over those little studs. One or two places I had to nip some of the wires because it kind of fell between two holes.
Right.
But everything was underneath. Push it down, then push those little speed nuts on with an 8mm socket till they were seated tight, flipped it over, and it looks like it came that way from the factory.
And I'm going to put a picture of it on the Instagram page. Man, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, cool. Next thing I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And mine's not even broken. It looks that cool.
It really does. And I tell you what, the airflow's a lot better out of it. But nothing falls down in there now.
Yeah, that's why I want to do it.
Screws, pencils, coins. Teeth?
I don't know. I mean,
okay. I've never had that one there, but glasses and things like that I have lost down there. Now, I'm trying to remember, when we ripped the dash out of your LJ, we found pencils, pens, cigarettes, paper clips that had fallen.
You name it.
There was all kinds of stuff back in there. So it was just amazingly simple to do. Even if you went out to the parts store and bought the 3mm push pins or went to Amazon, together with that piece of metal, I didn't even have to paint it. I just trimmed it with, shears. I used regular metal cutting shears, but you could probably get by with just taking side cuts and nipping it out.
Right.
It took me a whopping 30 minutes to figure it out. I think the piece of metal would do 4 screens.
If you have some TJ friends, split the cost.
Yeah, and then a packet of those. I think it used 7 or 9 of the push-on clips, and they're about 99 cents for a dozen. 3mm work beautiful on those little studs, so you don't want to break them. And it's fixed, and it looks like it came that way from the factory.
It does.
So that's probably enough to give you an idea that I've stayed somewhat busy chasing the little gremlins and slaying them unmercifully.
Poor Kilroy.
Well, Kilroy can go visit a few others for a while. He spent a few years with me.
You put your time in.
And then, like I said, we'll in the next show, I'll talk a little bit about Chrysler's Quirk electrical, and hopefully you guys don't mind this electrical stuff. To me, it's kind of fascinating. I know it drives people crazy.
It's a lot of questions we get.
So anyway, I think we're done in the garage for now.
Yeah.
And I've got to, I think, depending on how long the isolation continues, I may actually readjust the parking brakes on the back. Oh, I did rotate the tires too. That needed to be done. Yeah, just all those little myriad things. I might even have to break out the grease gun.
Oh my goodness. So, well, I went ahead and got the door, but again, I hope everyone else is coping just as good as we are because again, we get a lot of things done. Other than that, I mean, I can't really thank you guys enough, you guys and gals and listeners, because you've been reaching out and sending us messages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and we promise we will return to recording the shows
Video-wise.
Video-wise. It's a little tough when Scott literally is running in here from work since they are working in pretty hard. Gives you an idea that even though it's a little frustrating, he's the go-to guy for the company, so they reach out to him. And, the problem is when you're the guy who can do every job, you're the guy who gets to do every job. And so, hey, Scott, can you close? Hey, Scott, can you open? Hey, Scott, can you run over to this shop and get it fixed? And, oh, by the way, come back over.
Yeah, we need you to do this. And the funny thing is I made the joke earlier. It's that, at the end of the day, all of us here in my parts department, which we're down people, a few people got sent home. We're like Eleanor at the end of Gone in 60 Seconds. Yeah. We're running, but 3 cylinders and the mirrors hanging off, and it's a little rough at the moment. Yeah. But we're going to make it through.
It is. So anyway, folks, I think we've more than run out of time here.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to say real quickly again is, take that time to check out small businesses.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of them are struggling, and stuff like that. So again, like Red Scorpion Fabworks, the Jeep Lab, Kenny Brockett Specialty Motorsports, and Mark at WranglerFix.com. Mm-hmm. Thanks to those guys, and again, thanks to all our Patreons. We really appreciate everything you guys do.
We do, and go out there and support them, even if it's just your local pizza. Mm-hmm. You can drive through and pick up. I realize things are starting to open right now, but still. We've lost a couple of big chains.
Sweet Tomatoes isn't opening anymore.
Sweet Tomatoes and Soup Plantation have basically shut their whole business down because how are you going to do self-serve salad bars? You know? And so be patient. For example, my local barbershop opened, but they're only allowing one person in the entire store at a time.
Yeah.
So I think I'll be cutting my own hair for a little while longer. Scott's over here cackling.
I did mine last night with a Bic razor.
So, anyway, enough talking. I think it's time we go out to the repaired, slightly altered, and lock hubs, put the Jeep in 4-low, and hit the trail.
And thanks for spending time with us. And as always, wheel legal,
tread lightly.
And together we'll get through this, and also to check it out in our next episode of On the Trail with Kevin and Scott.
And as we say, should you be out playing on the trails as part of your social isolation, take nothing but pictures, memories, and your trash. Please take your trash when you leave the trail.
Cool.
So we'll see you on the next show. All
right, guys.
Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.